Daire, getting ready now for the All-Ireland series. You've had this bit of a break, I guess, since the Galway game at the end of the Leinster. I'm sure rearing to go now again at the weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. Just been saying to the lads there today that 3 weeks seems to be a long break in the championship at the moment, with the week-on-week structure. So, but yeah, it's been good. We've had time to refresh, kind of take a step back and, take the learnings on board and just go at it again.
It's a mixed bag of a season. Like, in a way, you probably should have got out of Division 1B. You were winning the games against Waterford and Offaly with 5 minutes to go, got men sent off and lost both of those games. And then when it came to Leinster, you'd qualified early by doing the business in the first 3 games. Like, how do you reflect on how the first 6 months of the year have been?
Yeah, look, I suppose there is a mixed bag there, as you said. We felt like throughout the league and the championship, really strong performances, a lot of positives to take out of it. But look, ultimately, we would have wanted to be in that Leinster final there at the weekend, and we weren't. So again, it's a bit disappointing. But look, we know that there's a bit more earnest, and we know that maybe we didn't entirely put our best foot forward. And look, that's what gets you to training. The next Thursday or the Saturday. When you go at the internal games and things like that. It really drives you on, that kind of stuff. So.
Niall Ó Ceallacháin strikes me as a very ambitious manager as well. Like, when he came in, he had high ambitions. He wanted to get Dublin to be competing with Kilkenny and Galway for Leinster titles and wants you to push on from here. You can take a good step this weekend. Like, if you win this, potentially you're playing Limerick in a couple of weeks' time in an All-Ireland quarter-final. So I'm sure you want to go and spoil Kildare's party on Saturday.
Well, look, we just want to win the game, first and foremost. And look, we have a lot of respect for those boys, and we saw them at the weekend. They were absolutely brilliant, and their success isn't lost on us. We knew what they were coming with, and but yeah, look, Nelly, as we call him, he's a very ambitious man. I think when he took over in the Fianna first, I'm sure if he said we win an All-Ireland, I'm not sure everybody would have believed him. He's put the work in, and he stays at it, in fairness to him. So he's a very ambitious man. The whole management team are very ambitious, but yeah, look, that starts this weekend. We're looking at that, and we'll look no further.
Yeah, and look, I guess the year has kind of worked out nicely, so we're waiting for the Nafina lads to come back in after their exploits. They came back in and boosted your panel, and I think that must have been very helpful, that maybe you got to play a few games without them and got to meet your new management team, and then you had some very good players coming back in to help you out.
Absolutely, yeah. And look, I suppose the way most players look at it is it's just an opportunity. You're down the likes of Donald and Sean and things like that, and Colin, and those boys, well, they're off doing their own thing, and we were very happy for them. You just have to look at it as an opportunity to put your hand up if you're in those positions, and to be fair, a few lads did that, and they really gave the management a few things to think about, and I suppose throughout the winter months and coming into the championship. So yeah, at the end of the day, not having those boys can be a bit difficult, but it was just an opportunity for everyone else.
You must have been really happy. I call it the period where you qualified in Leinster first, like that comeback win against Offaly in the first round, the mad fest that was the Wexford game with all the goals in Parnell Park after that, and then going up and beating Antrim to know you were going to be in the top 3 even after 3 games played. Just to take that block first, you must have been very happy with how those 3 games went.
Yeah, we were delighted, really. I suppose the Offaly game, we were really tested there. You really saw the character in the group in that game, and I think we lost Donald Burke and Danny Sutcliffe in the first half of that game. Two massive players in our team, and look, the boys stuck at it. It was Ronan Hayes stood up big time. Hedgehoe stood up, and then look, I suppose we were hit with blow after blow in the Wexford game, and the boys stood up to it. And that's where the character comes in, and that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to put that kind of show on in Parnell Park, and look, we knew those tests were coming. We're no stranger to these teams, and just delighted with how the boys came out of it.
I guess the pitch in Parnell thankfully has recovered now at this stage. It was actually a bit mad seeing that, like, when it turned out it was vandalism as opposed to anything deliberate with any kind of patterns. I wonder, when I went in for the Offaly game, I saw these squiggly lines, and I saw the damage that clearly whatever been put in the pitch was. Like, that's a very proud venue for you as Dublin hurlers. You have a fantastic record there as well. I'm sure you're happy the pitch is back in good order again.
Delighted, yeah. I suppose a few of us got a bit of a shock when we saw it in that kind of state, but look, I know the lads working at the pitch, Sean, very well. He went to work. He was there. There was a couple of late nights. I know he was round the clock trying to get that pitch back in order, and by the Galway game, it was a good playing surface again. And look, it's just a credit to them. They work extremely hard at what they do.
Nice conveyor belt of talent coming through at the moment as well. Getting to provincial finals in the underage competitions this season, and like the minors had a good run during the championship as well. The under 20s knocked out the defending All-Ireland champions Offaly on their run this year as well. Like there is actually, it seems, with the younger players that come into your panel, there's actually quite a few good players coming into the panel now as well, which has expanded things out for you a bit.
Yeah, and it's just the management, seeing potential in the lads and getting them in, and just I suppose when things get going, you're playing with these guys in the training games, and you go play challenge games, and honestly sometimes I can't believe what I'm seeing in them. I mean, just the hurling ability, the athleticism. I suppose with the likes of Conal O'Reen, David Lucy, they're just lads who have really put their best foot forward in the league. And yeah, they're a bit young, but I think when you look at lads like that, you see, the talent coming is just huge, and it's really exciting getting to see that firsthand and see their development. From probably the best perspective.
When you reflect back on 12 months ago when you went into that quarter-final against Cork, it's kind of a strange one. Like Cork obviously went on and had a wonderful summer, but you restricted them quite a bit during the game. Is there any kind of regret that you maybe didn't let loose a little bit more with your own attack? It seemed like you were trying to stop them more so than anything else.
Yeah, well, look, I think looking back in that game, we did get a few things right. I thought, our full back line in the game was a great match for their full forward line, and it's really not an easy thing to do, but you have to give credit to our boys. And yeah, look, there wasn't much in it in the end, and they had serious momentum at the time, and there was hype about them. But we stood up to the challenge well. We dust ourselves off against a very disappointing Leinster final. I think we did that really well. And yeah, look, I suppose you wouldn't have any doubts that maybe the better team won the game, but look, I suppose we like any game, even games you win, you don't get everything 100% right, but in that game, look, we're happy enough with the things we got right, really, looking back.
I wouldn't expect you to be complacent any kind of way, no matter who you were playing this weekend.
Yeah.
But there's no way you could be complacent when you see the way Kildare hurled on Sunday at the John McDonagh Cup final.
Absolutely not, and look, we've played Laois and we've played Carlow coming out of the McDonagh final winners, and it's never an easy task, and the Kildare success, it's not lost on us. We've seen we've played them in challenge games this year, we've seen how good they are, we've hurled with a couple of boys at Fitzgibbon Cup. Naas have brought really competitive games in the Leinster Club Championship and the All-Ireland series. So look, we know exactly what we're facing, and look, it'll be a new venue for the whole lot of us, close to home, not too far to travel, thank God. But yeah, look, it's really exciting, and we have a really good game to look forward to this weekend.
On a final one, when I think of the way you played against Kilkenny, particularly that fight back at Nolan Park and pushing them right to the pin of their collar, maybe the Galway game didn't quite play out the way you would have hoped, but you showed you could mix it against Kilkenny, obviously one of the best teams in the country and the current Leinster champions. Does that type of display give you hope now when you face into these big challenges over the next couple of weekends? It
does, yeah, and it kind of shows the group, look, when we perform at our best and we do things, full throttle, that we're right there at the pitch of it, and it's just about putting that 70-minute performance together. I know Fintan kind of talked about maybe the same with Galway, but it's just we look at ourselves playing like that and we say, look, that's what we're capable of, and we're right there at the pitch of it with most teams, if all teams, and it's just about bringing a consistent performance and bringing a 70-minute game.
Cheers, our best luck in Newbridge at the weekend.
Thanks very much.